This is Your Pain Game podcast, where we talk about the game of living in and with chronic pain and trauma, getting to the heart of how to heal. I am your host, Lyndsay Soprano. On this show, I plan on discussing with doctors, chronic pain patients, holistic practitioners, loved ones, and anybody that is interested in having their voice heard in the chronic pain and trauma world that we live in. We all have challenges in our relationships, no matter what type of relationship they are, whether with our partners, our sweeties, our friends, family, coworkers. I mean, nothing is without challenges in our lives, right? And sometimes those challenges can completely blindside you. And I can speak to this from a CRPS perspective, but also through the gobs of challenges that I have been faced with in this life since I was a little girl. And as my listeners have already heard, and unfortunately will continue to hear about the challenges I have faced, but that's just because I have scratched the surface. It's a little scary to know that I've only scratched the surface of challenges. So one thing I would like to communicate, though, is that I am incredibly grateful for this show. And I am grateful that I am just doing this thing. And I'm so incredibly dedicated to it that it's taken over my life. But I'm grateful for my guests that I've already had on the show, those that are ready to rock and in the wings and in queue, and those that have reached out that just simply need more time to share their stories in this kind of modality, right? As these stories are not mine, they're yours. And being a guest on this show is not about my timeline. And through putting this show together, I have found some people that have opened themselves up to me and have trusted me to be vulnerable with, right? And it's starting to turn into almost a daily. And honestly, I feel like I've always been a person that's available for people to unload their stuff on, easy to talk to, no judgment, big picture. And this is a good thing about me and a bad thing about me. And I know this, I'm crazy codependent in an unhealthy way, which I've recently and truly accepted about myself. And with this acceptance, I've figured out that I give so much of myself away. And I'm not saying this to be like a martyr or anything, but it's true. I've given myself away and I've put me at the bottom of the list. And the last part of why I have CRPS and stress and blah, blah. But I'm learning that I take on a lot of people's traumas and sadness and their heaviness that comes along with that. And some cases, it's because of their personal struggles of things that they have no control over. But in my opinion, there are some cases that it's just terrible decision-making. And I am not the queen of every decision being perfect. So this is not me throwing any judgment any way. But those that entrust themselves to talk to me, sometimes it's so heavy. But now I'm taking this heaviness on with a different approach. And it's because of this show. And it is one that has boundaries. And that is a challenge. Boundaries are challenges for everybody. And, sadly, there are so many people within that, what do they call it? The like 6 degrees of separation that are coming out of the woodwork, wanting to talk. And people that I haven't seen or talked to in over 20 years, wanting to use their voice, wanting to help others through their stories and their challenges and their journeys. And I am so grateful, like I mentioned before, for that, and that I'm blessed and honored that you have started to talk and that you've chosen me as one of those people to do so with, and have also trusted listeners. So I just wanted to take a quick beat to say thank you for that. So on episode 3 of our show here, the episode is The Joy of How You Fit. I spoke with a transgender woman named Abby, whom I've known for 20 years. And as mentioned in her episode, when I met Abby, she was a man. And she spoke on the episode about her journey and the story of transitioning from a man to a woman. That started somewhere in about like 2.5 years ago. We talked about having the right to be who we are. We talked about having the right to love who we love. We talked about having the right to make decisions about our bods. Hello. Like, come on, politicians, like stay away from our happiness and our joy and our bods, And we talked about the obsession that our culture has with what's underneath our pants and our skirts, right? So here we are today. I have an amazing guest here. My guest is Abby's wife, Amanda, who has her own story, who also met Abby when she was a man. So, hey, Amanda, how you doing over there?
Hi, good. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. I'm grateful for having you be here. And I'd like to talk today about kind of the time frame of Abby's coming out as a trans woman, the signs, if there were any, what this experience has kind of been like for you, how it's affected you, your relationship, your support system, or potentially lack thereof, because I know this is kind of a touchy subject in some social circles, and how this can kind of be tied back to some pain and trauma. Are you cool with us talking about your side of this transition and how it's affected you?
Yeah, of course.
All right. Well, I'm rolling out the red carpet for you, babe. It's all you.
So basically it all started, Abby came out to me in February of 2020, I believe. And so it was definitely a shock to me. Literally nobody in the history of anybody was like, oh yeah, I knew it. Totally knew it the whole time.
Yeah, I certainly didn't.
And I had a little bit of warning. There were a couple of cues that I got in the weeks leading up to her coming out to me.
Weeks? Just weeks?
Just weeks. There was just a little bit something off. She started shaving her legs, and these were like small things that were easy to just whatever. But she started shaving her legs. I'm like, swimmers shave their legs. That's not anybody who wants to shave their legs can shave their legs. And I mean, far be it from me. I don't like shaving my legs. I wouldn't do it as a choice most of the time, but whatever. And this is a dumb thing, but we started taking women's multivitamins, and she was hiding some, like, we normally take women's multivitamins. I just buy the women's ones from Costco because I was just like, well, I need whatever is in these, obviously. The folic acid or the biotin or what have you. But I can't remember if it was actually before or after she came out, but I did at some point find just extra women's vitamins in the cabinet. And I was like, oh, that's weird. What is this about?
Yeah.
And then there were a couple Amazon purchases on her account that I just accidentally saw. But like, Abby is an amazing gift giver, and she will just buy things for me randomly all of the time, which is, I mean, it's the best.
I love that so much.
And we call them no reason presents. And like, she doesn't necessarily wait for a birthday or an anniversary. She'll just be like, hey, I got a present for you. I'm like, what? It's a Tuesday. Like, what is happening? And so, I saw some things on the Amazon account. I was like, I don't know, that could be for me. It could be anything. So those were really my only clues that I had that something was going on.
And those aren't really necessarily these huge glaring clues.
No. There was, like, looking back, I'm not seeing there were red flags popping up everywhere. Right. It was very subtle. I did get so far as maybe, and so we'll just go over this. I use past tense pronouns are always going to be female, because a transgender person is and always has been transgender.
Okay.
Even before transition, they were presenting as the gender that they were assigned as birth, because that's what they were told their whole life. So being transgender, I don't believe, is a choice. Deciding to transition is definitely a choice, but that person is and basically always has been transgender, just whether we knew it or not. So it gets a little confusing, but I do try to refer to Abby as female in past, present, and future tense.
That's fair.
So I got as far as thinking maybe she's cross-dressing, because what I saw on the Amazon account were some female clothes. And I think she had changed her underwear also by that time to just more form-fitting. But I mean, there's briefs, there's boxer briefs, there's, what have you. But yeah, so in my brain, I got as far as maybe she's cross-dressing. So she came out to me and I was just hit with a ton of bricks. And I was just like, oh.
Okay. That's it? That's what you did? You're like, oh, okay, give me a hot second.
Yeah. I mean, you need a minute to process that information.
Take a beat here. Oh my God.
So apparently she had used, like, Face app was popular a while back, and she'd use that app to switch her face. It was like a gender swap picture app thing. And she took a picture of her face and it swapped her to a female, what she would look like theoretically if she was female. And she looked at that and said, oh, that's what I want to see when I look in the mirror.
Yeah, she didn't say anything about that. That's interesting. I love this part of it. I'm like, ooh, I'm getting both sides of it.
So yeah, I guess that was one of the big things that she was like, oh. But yeah, so a couple things that she said to me when she came out that were pretty upsetting. First, she was like, okay, well, I'm pretty sure, still questioning. But I'm pretty sure I'm transgender, but I'm not sure if I want to transition.
Okay.
And so that's again where it comes in. A transgender person is always transgender. Whether or not they choose to transition, that doesn't change who they are or how they present themselves.
Right. You are who you are inside, regardless of what anybody else can see.
Yes. So, I mean, even if somebody, doesn't feel comfortable presenting as the gender that they feel that they are for social or safety reasons, that doesn't mean that they're not transgender.
Makes me sad that you even have to use the word safety.
Yes, exactly. But so, yeah, one of the things that she said was, maybe I won't transition. I don't think that I would be pretty as a girl.
Oh.
And yeah, that's pretty heartbreaking right there. First of all, because society is not nice to women who aren't pretty.
No, society is not nice to women in general.
Exactly. And it's not nice to people who are different and who look different. And so she didn't want to attract any sort of especially negative attention to herself. But as you guys talked about, Abby's not a type of person who really wants to attract any type of attention to herself in general, which I think is starting to change now that she's more comfortable in her own skin, which is great. But yeah, that was a heartbreaking thing for me to hear was, I don't think I would be pretty. And I'm not sure that I want to actually transition. And I was like, okay, well, first of all, that's not an option. I was like, I'm taking that option off the table. Like, once you have this realization, and first of all, I knew because she was telling me this, that this was obviously something that she's already had a thought and been thinking about for a long time. Because as you guys talked about, Abby does not rush things.
No.
She does not make rash decisions. She does not do almost anything up until this point of me knowing her quickly.
Right. And same thing with me. I'm like, it's usually like poking the dog, like, come on, all right, where are we going here? And that's why it was so surprising to me on our episode about her talking about her timeline and how fast it was.
Yes. Yeah. So, I mean, I've learned through the years, if I plant the seed early. If I want to do something, I might mention it a year ahead of time.
Oh, wow. I'm like a 3-monther with her.
I mean, but throughout our relationship, everything has moved slowly. Like, we decided we were dating, but it took 2.5 weeks before we kissed. We did long distance relationship for 4 years while I was in college.
Oh, that's right.
Which was awful. Do not recommend. But then, I graduated college and she was moving up and we were going to finally be in the same city together. And I assumed after we've been together for 4 years, I just assumed we were going to be living together. And so I was like, okay, we need to start, apartment shopping, looking at stuff. And she was like, whoa, hang on. I don't want to make any rash decisions here. And I was like, I'm dead. Whoa. What have we been doing for the last 4 years? Like, if we're not moving in together right now, I don't know what we're doing.
We might have to peace out on this thing.
And I mean,
Abby,
she comes around and she took a step back, thought about it and was like, yeah, I guess you're right. It probably makes the most sense for us to move in together.
Well, I remember when she told me that she was moving in with you.
I mean, and it was a big step. Like, I know her family would not approve of cohabitating before marriage.
Of course not.
But then it was another 4 years after that before we even actually got married. And so anyways, nothing in this relationship has gone quickly. And I know that she doesn't make snap decisions. So I knew that her telling me this meant she had given it a lot of thought. And I was like, okay, not transitioning, not an option. And like, of course you would be a pretty girl. Like, I can see it. I think you would be very pretty. And for the record, I was right. She's gorgeous. Like,
oh yes, she's turned out lovely.
It's only been like I can't do math, a year and a half, 2 years.
Yeah, about 2, I think.
Like, she's gorgeous. I'm waiting for some rando dude to walk up to us while we're out together on a date night or whatever and start hitting on her right in front of me. It's going to happen someday.
Oh.
But anyways, so I was just like, yeah, you're definitely gonna transition.
So were you, I mean, because it was really just like, I'm not sure about this, but you were the one that encouraged to transition this is a non-starter, like this is no option, you're transitioning?
I mean, no, obviously she has options, but I gave her strong support and encouragement that if that's something that she wanted to do, I was 100% behind her.
That's really, really, and I don't like to use the word admirable or brave. You know what I mean? Because like you didn't just pull a baby burning, from a burning building or whatever. But I do think it is admirable because I think that there would be in situations like for me, I don't know if I would have been able to do it on the flip side, if I was you, if I was in the same situation. So I give you mad kudos for that because I don't know if I would be strong enough to do it.
So the way that I see it is, I mean, she's still the same person. This is still the same person.
That's true.
That I've known and loved for 17 years now. And she's my favorite person in the world. And I don't love her in spite of being transgender. I love her because of everything that she is. And just through the transition, she's just become more of who she already was. And, you can just see more of her personality coming through. And I love it. I think it's great. I want her to be happy and be the best version of her that she can be. And, I don't think there's anything really admirable or brave that I'm doing. I'm just loving and supporting my partner who I agreed to love and support for life.
Well, I'm over here. Of course, you guys both know me. I'm about ready to cry. But so I have tissues to the right. Well, and I love you for loving her the way that you do.
Thank you. Okay, so that was her coming out to me. Oh, she said one more thing during the coming out process that was difficult for me to hear. After she said, she wasn't 100% sure if she wanted to socially transition, but she said that she didn't want to be my husband anymore, but that she would rather be my wife. And that whole statement in an entirety is fine, but I only heard the first half of that statement.
Right. Oh, shit.
Where she said she didn't want to be my husband anymore. And my heart dropped out of my chest and shattered into a million pieces on the floor. At which point I was just like, yeah.
Yeah. Well said.
I don't have words for that.
Exactly. I don't know how you could.
Exactly.
So are you saying that we're getting a divorce? Like I only heard 50% of that and that's all I'm hanging on to right now.
Right. Exactly. It was just one of those where like words stopped entering my brain after that and my brain entered panic mode.
That's heartbreaking.
It was heartbreaking. And I had to afterwards, I obviously took some time to process information and think about things. And, when I thought about the statement as a whole of what she was saying, it's not a horrible, heartbreaking, life-altering statement. And so I don't know, maybe she just could have changed the wording a little bit better.
This is your fault, Abby. Thank you. No, I get that, but wow, that is such a powerful statement when you think about it. It's almost like you can't be married to a husband anymore. You have to be married to a wife.
Right.
Not have to, forcing you, but it's just that's a lot. That's heavy.
Yes. And so then I have to start, you start thinking about gender roles and okay, so what does it mean to have a husband versus having a wife? And again, I'm going through the whole thing of logically, this is still the same person. I'm using different words, titles, pronouns, but at its base, she's still the same person who I've always known and loved. And we're also lucky because our relationship is not heavily gender stereotyped on purpose. Like I have purposely tried to not fall into gender stereotypes. Like we divide household chores, I think, pretty evenly, according to, our strengths and weaknesses.
Sure.
It's not like one person does all of the house chores, or, when we go out, I'm often the one who does the driving, which I feel like in most relationships, it would be the guy doing the driving. But Abby just doesn't really like driving very much. I learned how to drive sooner than she did. So when we were 16, 17, I had a car and a license, and Abby didn't until she was 18 or 19.
Yeah, I think I remember that.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it was from very early on, I was always just the driver, which if you think about it, like in most relationships, if a couple goes out, it's the dude driving generally.
Yeah, I don't want to talk about my sweetie's driving.
Okay.
It's terrible. I have PTSD every day from him being behind the wheel.
So when you two go out, does he usually do the driving?
It kind of depends. Our situation is so weird because we are going back and forth between Los Angeles and Orange County and blah, blah, blah. But this isn't about us. But yeah, so you have there's a stereotypical roles that are in place, right, in our society, that being the man drives and the woman sits in the front seat, which is like, I would rather be the driver, and because I just drive better. Mm-hmm. I just do. And he knows it. But for me, with my legs and my feet, it's getting more and more challenging for me to feel safe behind the wheel. Not just because of myself and my loved ones that might be in the car, but for those people that are around me driving as well.
Okay, fair enough.
Yes.
But anyways, so just, examining gender roles and just thinking about, what does it mean to have a husband versus having a wife? And I did have to think about, am I okay with being in a same-sex relationship? And, what does that mean for me? And I mean, obviously the conclusion that I came to was, yes, I'm fine with that. I then did also have to question my own sexual identity, which I've never really had to examine because, again, we've been in a relationship since I was 16, 17 years old.
Yeah.
So I've always had the theory that like everyone's a little bit bi. And I don't know if that's a true theory or just something that I think because maybe I'm a little bit bi, if I'm just like projecting. But yeah, so I did have to start then, questioning my own sexuality and what does this mean for me and our relationship. And yeah, I decided that I don't have any problem with being in a both female relationship. Does that make me a lesbian? The answer is no, because I don't identify myself that way because I'm not primarily or exclusively attracted to women. But I can be if this situation presents itself.
Okay.
So there's a lot more terms out there now for sexualities. And, I've but I've, done a small amount of research and looked in. So, there's bisexual, which generally means, attracted to two or more genders. It used to be two genders. Now it's been updated. And the definition, most people will include or more genders that they're attracted to. There's also pansexual, which is just attraction to people regardless of gender.
Yeah, like just love people.
Yeah. So that one's just a little bit more open. Just you love who you love, and we don't need to bring gender into it necessarily. And then another one is demisexual, is a person who can only develop feelings of attraction after forming an emotional connection with a person. And so, I haven't really 100% reached a solid conclusion. It hasn't really come up. I just tell people about my wife and they just don't miss a beat. And they're just like, okay, she's married to a woman. That's all you need to know, really.
Right. Yeah.
But if somebody asked me what my sexuality was, I don't really have an answer for them right now. I would probably say bisexual because that's the easiest answer that I don't have to explain.
Sure. Yeah, that's fair. Because it is confusing. I mean, it is. I mean, I'm obviously older than you guys are, but I mean, we didn't have these conversations. It's not that it wasn't happening though. Mm-hmm. And like, I've got a really, 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 really close friend of mine, dear friend of mine, who in high school, as soon as you started talking about cross-dressing earlier, I immediately thought of him. And he was little Mr. Cross-dressing for everything. Halloween was like the blast. And then he just started like doing these amazingly beautiful photo shoots as a woman. And it was just like, oh my God, you're amazing. And he's gay, which we all knew, but now he's married and so on and so forth. But I think that especially in that day and age back in, oh gosh, I'm aging myself. But anyways, in the 80s and 90s, it was not necessarily something that was acceptable per se, because it was just like, awkward for people. God bless America. If we make you feel awkward, And now I feel like there's so much more information out there that it's almost so much more confusing. And I've learned a lot from Abby's episode with her, and I'm learning just as we're speaking, and of course with our prep for the episode. So I have a question about how people treat you guys, generally speaking. Because Abby because she's tall, and does she feel like she sticks out like a sore thumb because she's tall? Do you have people that are mean to you, or have you guys experienced any disrespect in relation to your guys' relationship, which leads me into your support system as well?
Okay. So overall, we honestly have been very lucky. I can't think of a single negative encounter that we have had with strangers. Honestly, if we get attention out on the street, it is positive attention.
That's wonderful. I love that.
People think we're cute because we are. I don't know how else to say it, but we're out walking around. We hold hands. We're not big on PDA. We're not like making out in the corner because that's weird and gross and nobody wants that. But, we hold hands as we're walking around. I've noticed people notice us and like sort of just give an encouraging smile as like, I see you and you're cute. But no, we haven't so far, fingers crossed, knock on wood, we haven't received really any negative attention or negative feedback by any means.
Well, that makes my heart super joyful, because I've heard the opposite in some other situations such as this. And it just breaks my heart that people just won't let you be who you are and won't let you just love who you love. As long as you're being safe and loving people in a community, you're not, So from your support system, I mean, you told me, basically your family support system has been mostly okay with everything.
Yeah. So basically we went through the coming out process together, for the most part, because I felt like it was important that we present a united front.
How did you do that?
We got together, we talked about, we were like, all right. And you know how Abby feels about lists. So there was a list.
I do.
We talked about who do we need to come out to in person, who are the closest friends and family that we feel like deserve an in-person conversation. And once we got those people, basically we just, we sat down and we talked to them. And I let Abby take the lead on that conversation, obviously, but I was there for moral support and let her say, I have these feelings. I've been feeling like I am a woman and I want to live my life as a woman. And so, and just telling you, I would prefer if you use female pronouns, and my name is Abby now. And so we did sit down and have that talk with my family, her. Well, she didn't get to do her family in person because they're kind of dispersed.
Yeah.
And I think she did her parents on her own just because, I don't know, didn't feel like I needed to be involved in that.
Yeah, we'll leave it at that.
And so we have sort of our friend group was having a game night get together at like mid or maybe the end of February. It was right before all the COVID lockdowns happened. And so there was like one last game night that we had before nobody saw each other ever again.
Right, yeah.
And we didn't know
Before
that.
the world closed.
Yeah, we didn't know that at the time.
Sure.
But she was able to just sneak that in right before lockdowns happened. And so she did get to come out to most of our friend group in person. And then anyone who wasn't there just basically got to see it on Facebook.
Yeah, I remember when I saw the big post about it after, obviously she came out to me as part of that group. And again, I don't like to use the word brave. I was just proud of her because to your point, like she's shy. She's, she takes her time on making decisions and she's not super like outgoing and blah, like myself, which God bless America. Cause if there's a bunch of me in this world, we would have already imploded, but she wrote so eloquently about it and, was just, this is it. Like that's the meal. This is it. My life, my choice, and I'm proud of her for doing that. And earlier, I didn't want to interrupt you, but she also has gained an intense amount, and from my perspective, an insane amount of confidence.
Absolutely.
That she had not had from working with her for as long as I have and being, partner with her in crime for all of these years. And her confidence level is just like, whoa, off the charts.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's just like proof, not that we need it, but it even gives more proof to and validates her decision to do what she's doing. And I think, a great deal of that is that she has you.
Well, thank you.
Well, it's true. It's a legitimate statement from me, just so you know. So from a support perspective, I know that Abby, she went to a therapist and she was talking to a gender specific therapist. You've gone to therapy as well, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So, like we mentioned, so the coming out and the transition process all happened like right before and during COVID. So there was just a lot going on during that time in general. And I was also dealing with a career change and there was just a lot of big life changes happening at the time. And I was just like, I don't know how to deal with all of these things that are happening. And I need an adult.
You had said, I need to hire an adult. I think that's what you said.
So, my dad passed away a long time ago, 9 years ago. And my mom had a stroke in 2019, early 2019. So that was why we moved back here from Florida. And so it was just a lot of big life-changing things that were happening all at once. And I was just like, oh, I don't know how to deal with any of this. But like the transition, I kept saying, the transition stuff is at the bottom of my stress totem pole right now. Like
that's unreal.
I've got 4 or 5 things stacked on top of each other. And the transition is the lowest thing that I care about. Like I care about it, obviously, but that's not the thing that's stressing me out the most at this moment in time. So yeah, I did hire a therapist. I went to her on a weekly or biweekly basis for about a year. And like, honestly, almost every single time I went, I was just like, well, we don't need to talk about transition stuff today. Here's what's bothering me today. It's something completely different.
Right, yeah. Let me tell you one of these collective traumas that are happening to me.
Yes.
And none of them are related to transition.
Exactly. But I did go to therapy. It was very helpful. I highly recommend it to anybody that needs some help sorting out life issues. And, so she also did sort of help me sort through, what is the difference between having a husband and a wife? What does that mean to you? And how do you feel about that? And so, yeah, I did find it helpful.
Do you still go to therapy or no?
No,
Okay.
It was not covered by my health insurance.
Along with a bunch of other stuff that needs to be.
Mhm.
Hello. Yeah, mine isn't either. And it's expensive.
Mm-hmm.
It's like $200 an hour every Friday, 9 a.m.
Yeah. So I could only do that for so long, but she did help me get to a place where I felt more stable. Where I felt more like, okay, I've got my feet under me. My life is going in a direction that I am happy with. The world is probably not ending this year. So, I think things are going to be okay.
Things are just going to be okay. I mean, we all want everything just has to be perfect all the time. And the little Miss OCD in me and control freak, I feel that way. I'm like, why is this not going the way I wanted it to? Well, because guess what? You have no control. And, facing life's challenges the way in which you have, I love it because you're so loyal and so straightforward. And I love that about you. Has your communication has it been affected or has it gotten better because of all of this? Have you guys become better communicators? Not implying that you weren't before, but.
So, I mean, that's part of why our relationship is so strong and solid. I actually blame the long distance relationship that we did for 4 years. We've always had very good communication because there was 4 years where all we had was talking on the phone.
Yeah.
And so it was every day, at the end of every day, how was your day? What did you do today? And, we just had to find things to talk about. And, neither of us are necessarily super chatty people. I've talked about, I have a phone phobia. I hate talking on the phone, but talking on the phone to Abby doesn't count.
Well, yeah, of course.
Or the same thing as, I'm a very introverted person. And
there might be people, you don't know.
I mean, I've joked that there are multiple personalities in there.
Absolutely. Me too. I'm a Gemini.
But Abby doesn't count as people. If I'm feeling socially exhausted, I don't need to get away from Abby. She doesn't count as people.
Yeah, I get that. That's me and my sweetie as well. It's like, I just want all the rest of you drop off for a little bit. All right. I'm good. I've got this guy and I'm good.
Yeah. But we can have alone time together, if that makes any sense.
It does make sense. And I love that. It's beautiful and so loving. And I love that you guys have such a loving relationship with each other. And I do understand the PDA thing. I am definitely a PDA person. My sweetie is not. He's just not. It's just not his bag. And that's okay. We've come to kind of an even Steven in that regard. When we're out and about. I mean, I'm not the person that's going to just start making out with him randomly, that's ridiculous, but that's for us, not for other people. But that's definitely a challenge for introverted people. And he is not one and neither am I, but it's just that's for us, not for you guys. So, and I know we've talked about, we're not talking about the intimacy and the sex life that you guys have. And that's a respectful boundary that we have put up for this episode, as well as Abby's, because I know people they have questions about it, and that's okay. Keep having questions about it. All right. But that intimacy with you guys, not necessarily from a sexual perspective, but that kind of it circles back to the communication, that your communication has always been good and now it's even better. And that to me is intimacy. And to its own extent, because at the end of the day, there's, sex is only sex here and there, it does not rule our lives. I mean, it rules some, but so is there anything else? I mean, I could sit here and ask you a billion questions and I don't want to take the rest of your day here. But we talked about briefly before the episode about we've got these pronouns and all these things. It's very confusing. I'm confused and I was an English teacher, right? I was a sophomore English teacher. And so I would hate to be somebody that is an English teacher right now, trying to navigate the world of pronouns and their usage, because they do not follow any normal structure that we are all used to. Now, normal is obviously in this particular, I hate to use the word normal, but that is what it is, that she is a she and he is a he and all this, what's a they? I don't know. And so I know that that's been a challenge. How was it for you guys when the name change happened? And did you help her pick her name, by the way? Or did she come and say, this is going to be my name?
Yeah, I did not have any input on the name. I asked her when she came out to me, I was like, well, do you have a name picked out? She had a name that she always liked growing up. And then her dad and her stepmom ended up having a baby, and they named their baby the name that she always liked. I don't know. I don't think I've asked her if that was the name that she would have used if her half sister didn't now have that name. But anyways, I asked her if she had a name in mind, and she said Abby Dawn. And I was like, oh, that's beautiful. I like that. So, I mean, that was my only input. I was just like, yeah, that's good. That worked.
Okay. All right. That works. So how was it from a transitioning perspective for you? Calling out, hey, we're not using his name because we've respected that. But hey, you. Like,
Yeah.
how do you do? Because I know for me, we shout out each other like, our honeys and our sweeties and we definitely have pet names for each other.
Yeah. So we don't do pet names. That's not a thing that we've ever done. So if I had started using a pet name suddenly, it would have been weird. And so she definitely would have noticed. I did have a hard time at first changing the pronouns and the name. And there was definitely a short period of time when I just sort of tried to avoid using her name well, if you're talking directly to the person, there's no need to use pronouns.
Sure.
I'm talking to you. I don't have to say he or she. I just say you. But there was, a little bit of time where I just tried to avoid using her name. I would just call upstairs, just be like, hey, food's ready. Yeah, come on down.
Hey, you get a little triangle, like ding, 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 dinner time.
Yeah. It did feel a little bit uncomfortable at first. It was a little bit weird, but the more you do it, the more you get used to it, the more natural it becomes. It's just down to practice. I will say that there's a very easy rule to follow when it comes to pronouns. And all it is if a person tells you what their pronouns are, then that's how you refer to them. It's just
like, don't study it. Don't worry about it. That this is just who they or them or what, whatever it is, that's that. And that's what it is.
Yeah. Just don't overthink it. If a person tells you what their pronouns are, you use them. That's all there is to it.
Okay. I mean, that's fair. And I'm not going to say that it's not weird because
no,
it is a little weird.
I won't disagree with that.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for not blowing sunshine up my ass. No, because it is. I mean, it's weird. And, I have a cousin of mine whose son has gone through this transition as well, younger than when Abby did, but ironically had the same name as a man. And so, and she wrote this beautiful letter to our family about it. And I actually shared it with Abby only because I consider Abby to be friends with family and from my perspective, but it just sealed the deal in my brain for how Abby approached everything and how she's done it and how my cousin's daughter did the same thing and younger,
Mm-hmm.
and it was beautiful. And there's nothing but love and acceptance on this side. That's for sure. And, there's pain on both sides of it, and pain, we talk about the pain game podcast and I'm not talking about, it's not just physical pain. And that's what I've talked about. There are emotional, like you mentioned, heartbreaking moments,
Mm-hmm.
that are painful, that not necessarily fall into the category of trauma, but you're going through, you lost your dad, your mom had a massive stroke. You had to leave your career to go take care of your mother, move out of your state, back to California, all the way across the country. Like, those are all traumatic things. Moving, divorce, and death are the top 3 things that are stressful. Like, it's hard on your bod and it's hard on your heart, and it can like bubble up in other places in your life that you don't necessarily even know the reason why, and I feel like I have mad respect for you and what you guys have been through together and what you've had to go through with your parents and all of that stuff. So, keep it on up, lady.
Thank you.
Is there anything that you have for listeners that are in your spot? That you have any like last little, anecdotal, anything that you'd like to share or anything else that you'd like to share with our audience?
Yeah, I mean, there's not a whole lot of things out there that are designed specifically for partners of transgender people, but there are a few. And one of them is a subreddit that I found on Reddit. It's just called My Partner is Trans. And so that's one place that I found where people who are, going through a similar situation, either you could be in a relationship with somebody that you already knew was trans before you got into the relationship, or people that are in the same situation as me where you're already in a relationship with somebody and then you find out that your partner is trans and just, how do you deal with that? So that's one sort of like a support community that I found online.
Yeah. And you sent that to me. So I'll put that up with show notes as well, guys.
Mm-hmm. But I do also want to say that, like, if somebody in the situation did not decide to stay with their partner, like, that's also a valid choice. Like, I don't think that staying with your partner just because you think that's the right thing to do is necessarily a good decision. Like, everybody deserves unconditional love and support. And like, if you're staying in the relationship just because you think you should, that's, to me, on par as, not getting a divorce for the good of the kids. And it's like, is anybody really coming out better in that situation? Or would it be better if you did decide to part ways and you can both try to find something else that works better for you? So I just think in my situation, we got very lucky that, it's not a deal breaker for our relationship. And we definitely have come out of it, I feel like, with a stronger relationship because of it. But that's not necessarily the case for everybody. And I think that everybody deserves to make that own decision for themselves.
And I love that, because that does circle back to the beginning of the show when I was talking about, and what we talked about on the episode with Abby, was that we have the right to love who we love, and we have the right to make those decisions about our bods, and we do have the right to make decisions about our own lives. But, and thank you for saying that, because there may be people that are listening that are like, I was in that situation and I jammed, and you're affirming that decision. And I think that that's really cool of you to do that, because not everybody would make the decisions that I've made to stay in the relationship that I'm in. And some would not make the same decisions that you did as well. And so thank you for that, and for loving her like you do, because I'm just so grateful for you. Jesus, I'm quite a mess right now. Okay. I'm a very feeling person. What can I say? But thank you for being here today with us, Amanda. It has been a pleasure to have you here in our little space here in our studio. And it's always nice to have people here with me instead of just on our webcams or what have you, even though we're all used to it because of COVID and Zoom and stuff. But it's nice to see people,
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Thank you so very much. You are exclusively invited to share this VIP pain journey together. Let's get to the heart of how to heal with you by my side. Please follow the Pain Game Podcast wherever you digest your podcast content. We will be there. Visit us at thepaingamepodcast.com and follow us on all the socials. Thanks for listening, my little VIPs. Catch you on the other side.